In this week's episode of Renovate Ed, Lauren Wood, owner of Lauren Wood Builders, a highly respected design-build firm known for quality craftsmanship and thoughtful renovation work, joins Jennifer the Reno Gal Goldsby. Together, they discuss common challenges homeowners face during remodeling projects and, more importantly, the solutions that can keep things on track. Whether you're planning a renovation or just curious about what really happens behind the scenes, this conversation is full of practical advice and real-world insight. Let's get renovated.
Tiffany, tell us what led you into real estate.
Well, that's a funny story. So I never really knew much about real estate or considered it. I'm from Oklahoma, so I graduated from the University of Oklahoma. I went into sales. I knew I always wanted to be sales and marketing, so marketing was my major. My first job out of college was Kraft General Foods in Dallas, Texas, because that's what you do when you graduate college in Oklahoma, you move to Dallas. So I moved to Texas, did that, stayed in outside sales, a lot of Fortune 500 companies. Finally made my way to Indy through California and getting married and all of that. Made my way to Indiana, and we decided we wanted to look at purchasing a home. So it was going to be our first home. Visited a new home community in the west side in Canby. It just happened to be a CP Morgan community, so I'm dating myself because it was that long ago. My realtor took us there. Started talking with the salesperson there. His name was Mitch Davis. We're still good friends to this day. And we were just talking, having fun, and he just started, asking me questions, and I was acting like I knew what he was talking about. I'd never built a house before, so he asked me something about a rough-in or something in the garage. I was like, sure, we need that. And I was like, okay, what is that again? So we were laughing. He's like, you really should, look into applying for a job here. And I was like, well, could it be that fun? I mean, you guys just stay in here. Like, you don't have to go out and get the business, right? You just have to stay in it. Like, how much could you possibly make? And then when he told me, working here, you don't want to work unless you're making at least this much. And I was like, okay, where do I sign up? And so that was really my first introduction into real estate, new construction, for about 15 years with CP Morgan. So I applied for a job, got the job. It was a phenomenal experience. I job shared with Rhonda Cooper, who's another rock star, has her own brokerage with Weichert now in real estate. And then, of course, when the market tanked in '09, then a lot of builders closed their doors, and CP Morgan was one of them. So that was the end of an era. So I started Real Results Real Estate, and that's how I got into real estate. And I have loved representing buyers and sellers, and it's a lot of fun.
That is fun. Yeah. Actually, I got into mortgage lending when my husband and I bought our first house, but it was because we had such a poor experience. And I was like, I'm not going any further till I understand what we're doing and why.
I have to admit, that was another one of my motivations, because I thought I really need to understand how all this works. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit, I guess you could say, I like to control. Yeah. Or at least understand. Yeah. So that was another motivation for getting my license and getting into real estate. Is just like, if this person can do this, maybe I could do this too. So yeah, it was fun.
It's also interesting that your first home was a new build, new construction build.
Yeah,
and just
absolutely.
Based on your experience as an agent, do you find that many first-time home buyers are their first home is a new construction?
No.
So.
I find that many buyers don't think they can afford to buy new. They don't know much about new. And honestly, a lot of times the realtors struggle. I think the stats say 6 out of 10 people would prefer a new home if they thought they could afford it. Mm-hmm. But about 2 out of 10 real estate agents proactively show it. Of course, property value has increased, and new construction might be a little bit more difficult to get into now as a first-time home buyer, depending on budget. But I have actually only had brand new homes. I've never bought a resale home. So that's an experience I haven't actually had personally yet.
You are so pampered.
I know. This is the problem. I love it. I know. It's so true. I've got to pick out everything both times. So we'll see. Eventually, maybe it'll happen.
Now, how long have you been in real estate total?
Goodness gracious. This will be year 28, I believe.
Okay. Wow.
27 or 28. So 1998 is when I started with CP Morgan. In February of '09 is when everything changed, and I launched Real Results. Well, I actually had gotten Real Results as an LLC, but I was doing mostly coaching. and consulting with builders. And then I went into the full-blown, listing and selling, a full-service real estate agent. And I helped a lot of people who had bought with us as a builder, but we were no longer going to be able to build their home. So that was kind of a wonderful entrance into traditional real estate, was helping a lot of my clients that I'd already been working with find a home now that they weren't going to be able to build with us, and several builders that decided to leave the market. So
That was a really tough time back then for builders.
It really, really was. It was rough. People today, we talk about our months of supply of homes on the market, which is probably on average still around 2 months of supply of homes. A healthy market is 6 months, and back then we had 18 months supply of homes on the market. It was like, well, take your pick. Would you rather have 2 months supply or 20 months supply of homes on the market? So it was rough. A lot of our industry that left, a lot of manufacturing that left. And so it was a tough job market.
Yeah.
Back then.
And we lost a lot of good builders then too. I was in Northwest Indiana during that time. And some of our builders up there, quality builders, they've really struggled. If you pulled through, a lot of them went under. It was difficult to watch.
Yeah, very few that made it. I remember when we finally got the news, we were supposed to be getting bought by a couple of other larger builders. I want to say Pulte and Estridge were the two. But then the banks weren't loaning to builders, and so that fell through. And so I remember the day we found out, because I was there. When I started there, we were building what's called one a day, meaning we dropped lumber on one house every day of the year. So we'd build about 300 homes a year. We got all the way up to 13 a day. So we would be dropping lumber on 13 houses a day. It was a phenomenal, business model. And then we went all the way back down to one a day. So I got to see the growth and then, the decline because of interest rates in the market and really just life happening. And back then, Americans not being prepared for life to happen. Yeah. And so everybody was like a paycheck away from a foreclosure type
I don't
situation.
know. I feel like we're heading right back there with inflation. I mean, I could be wrong, but
I sure hope not. I sure hope this thing is about to turn around. I've noticed gas prices come down a little bit. So, and they say the price of eggs have come down a little bit. I don't know for sure, but I'm hoping, that it's going to be turning around. But it was significant. So that was a tough time. It was a tough time to see builders go out of business and people like, where's, my next job coming from? How am I going to take care of my family? Like, it was real. It was very real.
It was very difficult back then. Although, and I hate to admit this, but I was in the mortgage industry and I was doing pretty well. And through all of that, although others were struggling, my focus was on renovation lending. And that was such a steady business, and it kept me and my family fed during that Great Recession, I think they call it now. We were buying new cars, eating steak and lobster for dinner. My car payment was as much as the mortgage payments of some of the people I was helping, and I felt a little guilt about that, but then also just some huge gratitude that I had that ability to kind of skate through that. And some of my competition, big competition, they were closing doors too. The guys who had been in the mortgage industry for 20, 30 years, and they were struggling. But
I remember that too.
Relying on the renovation part of the business provided some real stability. So of course I'm, passionate about it now because it's done so well for my family all through the years.
No, I think that that's fantastic. And I always say issues bring opportunities and ways to find niches. And so not doing renovation, but my focus became helping people going through foreclosures. And that was an abundant business. And I was able to dedicate a good 10% of, my profit to a lot of friends who had to move or were really struggling, and helping them and dealing with the banks in situations like that, or short sales. Whew, I mean, that was a whole nother lesson, but you had to be really competent to get, those homes sold. And that was actually the year that that CP Morgan went out of business or decided to leave the market, was one of my best years in real estate, probably up to that point. Because, of course, I could sell anything to anyone because I had, access to all of the inventory on the market. So that was kind of a revelation to me. I was like, oh, wow, there's no restrictions on what I can, help you buy, but also just understanding the market at that time. So it was a great, opportunity. I learned a ton. And there's nothing like, starting out traditional real estate when it's in the toughest market. You kind of feel like whatever comes, I'm ready.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of thankful,
Yeah.
I'm very thankful.
And clearly
for that.
no stranger to transition.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you started in real estate, at least here in Indiana.
Yeah.
And then now you've moved into sales coaching.
Yes.
Can you tell me how that came to be and why
Yes.
that's your passion?
Oh, yes. So how that came to be was in new construction. I ended up selling and then managing and then becoming the trainer and then corporate trainer because we were moving into another market also. And I absolutely loved it. I love sales. I love selling. Don't get me wrong. I'm passionate about that. But I absolutely love dissecting what makes people successful and helping to transfer that to someone else. Like it's breaking things down to build people up, is what I would say. And there is nothing like helping someone realize potential that they did not realize they had or didn't know they had, which is what I think coaching is. There should be things that you're able to see and then to tweak, because you have to know how to fix that, to give people just a little bit more edge and allow them a little bit better results than just training. And so that's my passion. I absolutely love it, and that's how I got into it. And I honestly had no idea that I would love. That was what someone else saw in me when they watched me sell. They were like, "You should train." I was like, "Really? Are you sure?" Because I don't know. When I started doing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. I love organizing, the materials and how do you present it and what do you come up with that's, fun. And it's going to actually help people execute, because you got to be able to execute well if the, information is really going to benefit you. And so I love that. I love the challenge.
And we spend so much time in our work, we ought to love what we do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So which part
absolutely.
of this sales coaching is the most enjoyable for you?
Probably the role playing.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
get to inspect what I expect, right?
Yeah.
We all think we do things differently than we really do, and we perceive ourselves differently than the way other people might see us. And so I think the most fun is I love video shops for all those people out there who are like, ew. I love to do the mystery shops so that really high potential salespeople can see what they're doing and how they're perceived. And usually that's about as effective as you can be.
Yeah.
And it's the most persuasive way to just show people, okay, here's how do you feel? Most people critique themselves harder than I do. And they have this revelation and they realize that what they think they're doing is not what they're doing, or what they're doing is not what they think they're doing.
Yeah.
And so that's probably my favorite part, is doing the role playing or coaching someone on a video shot, because that's when the light bulb comes on. And most people will say, well, I don't, do this in front of a customer. And I'm like, well, if you're doing it with me right now, you'll do it in front of a customer. So you need to show me what you do. So I think that's a lot of fun. It's just like sports, right?
Yeah.
You play the game, the coach watches how you play.
Exactly.
And then that's what they critique, is how you play.
Funny you would say that.
And how you practice. I think sales, especially high-paid sales, has so much in common with professional sports. I really do.
Yeah.
And
Not just professional.
just sports.
Yeah. While you were explaining that, well, first of all, I love role playing.
Oh, good.
I know I'm probably in the minority, but you can't get better unless you practice at
You
something.
can't. That's
And
right.
it's so fun. And when you mess up and everybody's laughing, and it creates great memories, and
Yeah.
it helps to sharpen your skills for
I
sure.
would agree.
But while you were explaining that, I was traveling back in time to when I was a high school pitcher, and my stepdad was our coach. And we didn't have a pitcher on our team. The first year he took our team, I think we lost every game. He took a losing team. He knew what he was
Yeah.
getting into.
Right.
And the second year, he was like, yeah, that's not going to happen again. So he groomed myself and my sister to be pitchers. And oh my goodness, we went to camps and we practiced in my aunt's basement. And then when we were at games, he would take the video. And the most excruciating coaching I got was coming home after a game to watch the video of how all of my mechanics were wrong. I hated it back then, but I love the role playing now.
Oh my gosh. And it's so funny you say the mechanics, because I was just thinking it's really the focus on the fundamentals and really helping people identify when, especially the more skilled you get, sometimes the more you just kind of skate past the fundamentals. And you're just like relying on all this skill and talent, people skills that you
Yeah.
have. And when you can show salespeople, when you give them those mechanics, because that's how you get better, right? You practice how do you need to hold your arm if you're going to throw the ball the right way. And it's the same thing with selling. It's how are you going to communicate this information in a format that someone else can actually receive it the way they need to, so that you set really good expectations. And the more you have a structure and a strategy to that, the more effective you're going to be. It's not just about your wonderful people skills, right? It's about having a structure and a strategy. So it's the mechanics of it. And I absolutely love seeing even really, really high producing agents recognize you need a little more structure and strategy to this one area, and it can actually increase your conversion, and you can get more revenue, even if it's 2 more deals, because you did that differently. I love doing that.
Yeah, that is fun. It's rewarding too.
Yeah, it really
Yeah,
is. It really is. Yeah, I would agree.
We were in a meeting, a group of us at Diamond, with my employer. A group of us were in a meeting, and I had made a suggestion that our sales team, especially the new ones, the greener ones, the
Sure.
rookies, they need
Yeah.
some coaching, they need some mentoring.
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues said, that's what managers are for. And I bit my tongue, but I was thinking, no, I don't know. A manager and a mentor are not necessarily the same thing. They can be, but they're not
can be.
necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I suggested mentoring, not
Yeah.
managing. But I want to hear it from you, the professional.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the differences between managing, training, mentoring?
Yeah. So I think you're right. I think a lot of the clients that I work with, the managers just don't have the margin. I think a lot of managers would love to be mentors to their individual, agents or people on their teams. But I think with all of the other expectations of, developing structure, dealing with the budget, you got to be in other meetings with other departments, there's that cross-departmental, expectation. I think it's very difficult to mentor. And I would say to be a mentor, you really want the person you're mentoring to be comfortable that there's not going to be a wrong answer. I think that's hard with a manager because there's a certain expectation. And so it might be a little harder to be completely transparent and vulnerable, which I think is really important to mentor. Someone who, you may be mentoring someone who is not a fit for what they're doing, and you can help them discover that. Whereas I think managing would be hard to have that conversation. And I always say the difference between managing and training is I believe training is about knowledge, right? A lot of times, and coaching is definitely skill and habit. So with training, I think it's great because you got to have the knowledge. You have to have the right attitude. Those things are important. But coaching is about what you do with it. It's about the skills, the habits, the behavior. And I always like to define that because everyone that loves training doesn't necessarily love coaching. And sometimes people who like coaching don't really want to be in the classroom part and do the training part. They just want to be out there and evaluate what you're doing, your performance, your behavior. I think there can be a big difference in even just being an expert at something and then knowing how to teach someone else to be expert at it. Those are, the best players are not always the best coaches, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's true.
and the best coaches weren't always the best players.
That's very true.
But they could see the field, right? And they could see all the things, that would make the difference in the results of the game. And so I think there can be a definite difference between training, coaching, managing. You got to keep it all together. I mean, managing that's a high calling. That's a lot, and there's all different types of people and personalities that you have to, figure out how to motivate to get them to do for you. I've always said I like leading. I'm not a great manager.
I agree. I always say there's not enough money in the world to be a manager. And mostly it's because I was raised with such a strong work ethic
Yes.
that it's very, very difficult
Yes.
to find somebody who shares that work ethic.
Yes.
And when you're skipping meetings, when you're on your phone, when you're supposed to be in a meeting, and when you're not showing up and you're not doing the things you do, I have no patience for that.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. So I'm like, you probably don't want me in the room if you're not self-managed. if you're a self-managed, self-motivated, take initiative kind of person, we are going to have a great time all day long. And I'm just going to do everything I can to give you more opportunities to grow and to get better, and take things next level. But if you need someone to tell you to show up on time and get to work,
You need a
you
mom,
don't want
not
me
a manager.
around. I'm not good at it. I have friends who are phenomenal at, really doing that, motivating people and getting. I'm just like, I feel like that's babysitting, and
Yeah, I agree.
so that's why I coach. I love coaching because people typically who want to be coached are people who, already doing the other things and they just want to keep getting better. So
Yeah.
I love coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes the job more rewarding too when somebody's actually following through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
See
and
the results.
the other thing that I've experienced with some of the teams that I have coached, especially some of the new home builders, is when there's an intense level of coaching, just like, a national championship team, if it's not really in your heart, you find out that you really want to do something that makes you happy. And when there's not that level, you can kind of convince yourself that it's okay. But when you're pursuing excellence and you have an organization that's pursuing excellence, one of the things that will happen is people will be like, oh, we're bringing in X factor. Maybe this is not what I want to be doing because maybe I don't want to take it to this level. Maybe it's not worth it to me. And I think that's important too. I think you should be really, engaged and passionate about what you're doing. Everybody's happier when everybody's engaged.
Yeah.
And sales is hard. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of expectation. It's competitive. So it should be something you really enjoy doing. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I feel like that's a win too when I can go in and help an organization take it next level. And people who don't really want to do that, they're like, this is a good time to maybe part ways. I think that's a win too for an organization.
I don't think it's crazy. And I think to some extent what you're describing is culture.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And in some organizations, I know they really want to have that continual pursuit of excellence culture, but they haven't figured out how to implement it. And I will always tell them it starts with your people strategy. It always starts with Right People on the Bus, Good to Great. It's a, wonderful book that I read years and years ago. Right People on the Bus, and then high expectations so people are set up for success. And if they don't pursue that, then that's their decision. But I find a lot of times the sales organization has a huge impact on the culture of the organization. And when you can get that right, because you want there to be lots of integrity, right?
Yeah.
And clarity and ownership, owning the understanding of your client. So I find that the sales organization can have a huge impact on the culture. And when you get that right, man, I think it can be
I would agree.
cool.
I would agree because when I started with this group of people I'm working with now, they taught me the mortgage industry 20 some years ago.
Uh-huh.
And it was like a great big family. And my mentors with this group, they're the ones that taught me to take care of your people. You take care of your processors. You take care of your underwriters. You ask them how their day went, how their family's doing.
Yeah.
Spend some time. You don't just show up in their office and ask about your loan right away.
Right.
Just take
Yeah.
a personal interest.
Yeah.
And then package your deal. Now, this was back in the days of paper files.
Right.
Package your deal well.
Yes.
So you don't have to make their job tougher than it already
right.
is.
That's
Like,
right.
They trained me really well to help build up my team and take care of my team.
Yeah.
And then I moved out of Footprint, and I've had many other positions with other companies since. And it has been practically impossible to find that same, I'm going to call it culture, but it's kind of like a work family.
Yeah.
And obviously, I was in sales
Sure.
when they were training me way back when to take care of my team. And I was in sales when I moved on to other organizations. But what I witnessed is that the salespeople stomped all over the operations people. And it never worked. It never worked.
No.
But now I'm back there. I'm back home, so to
Yeah.
speak. And we have that same environment, that same collaborative
Yes.
approach. And
Yes.
it's so hard to find.
It is hard, high standards. Everybody that's willing, to carry their weight and responsibility. One of the things I've always appreciated was the structure that we had when I was in new construction, where there were 5 VPs. They were all equal, in level of authority, but also level of responsibility. And very collaborative, because you had construction, land development, operations, sales, and we're the people who are touching the customer. So whatever that company culture is, we're the ones who are communicating that, more than likely to our customer, which is then going to, in turn either be a really positive thing and it's going to continue to strengthen the organization, or it's not, and you're always going to be fixing problems. I always loved the way the 5 departments just always talked and always had each other's best interest at heart, and you could see that trickle down amongst all the different departments. Construction did customer service training with sales. So we're all always saying the same thing. It's that brand message too. And that's really, really important. So yeah, I would agree with you. Sometimes it's hard to find. I don't know why. I hate that, but it does seem like it's more of a struggle, and even bringing on or working with different agents or others in real estate. It's like sometimes you feel like you're on a different planet with what you expect out of your agents that are representing your brand, which I'm thankful to say I have a phenomenal team, and it's really fun and exciting to have.
It does
that.
make a difference.
It makes all the difference.
I feel like times are changing too, so I'm going to ask you this question before I make any assumptions, but what I would assume is that in years past it would have been tougher to coach builders, but I think they're more receptive now. Do you agree with that?
I don't know. I think it depends on the organization. It really depends on the size of the builder. What I find are the larger ones have a set way of doing things, and whether there's opportunity for improvement there is a little bit more difficult sell. Like I have to mystery shop their people and then send them the shops and say, okay, is this what you're expecting? Because this is what's happening. Whereas I think the mid-size, which is a lot of times what I focus on, builders in that growth mode who know they have the potential to grow and are just trying to figure out what are the pieces to the puzzle, they are definitely, I think, more open to how can we get this team better? How can we increase our conversion? So yeah, I think it really depends on the builder, but certainly in this environment, there is all kinds of mystery in the best way to motivate the younger generation to like we've been talking about, to hit, the results and reach the potential that we know they have, to reach. So with that, I do think there are builders who just like to have a different voice that can, speak to maybe the exact same things that they've been saying, but it just comes and lands differently when it's an outside person who's looked at multiple organizations and multiple different personalities. I have a different way of approaching it, of course, and I think it's important to be able to identify very quickly, who are the influencers and who are the, people who might be a little bit on the fence and who are the ones that are just out there. So that's fun, and I think that's a benefit often to builders because you can get in a rut. With the same people saying the same thing or just the same structure. Just a little bit can really ignite a whole different type of a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
And
so
I love doing that.
What I think I'm hearing is that the values have stayed the same, but the delivery is changing.
Yeah. I would say that's true. There's so many builders out there, and there's a lot of small builders, a lot of small mom and pop type builders who are definitely looking for that thing that can be the glue that really cements their team and makes them more productive and getting stronger results with what I would say a lower or lesser investment in leads. So my whole thing is increasing that conversion, selling more homes with almost zero additional lead costs because that is expensive.
Yeah.
And there's so many times that the leads are just not being managed the way they could be to get more revenue out of them. And I think when you get into a lot of the mom and pop builders, that's very, very attractive to them.
Real estate agents. Do you have deals falling apart at home inspection or appraisal because the seller won't make repairs? This does not have to be a deal breaker. If the buyer is willing to absorb the costs, they can be financed into their new conventional FHA, USDA, or VA mortgage. All they need is a contractor and a bid. The work gets done after closing, and everyone still gets to the finish line. Visit therenogal.com or call 844-RENOGAL to learn more.
Now, I don't work for a large mortgage company. I work for more of a mid-size, as you're describing.
Yeah.
But my observation with the industry is that we used to be a relationship industry. Then we went to a lead industry. And I'm hoping we're coming back to the relationship part of it.
Yeah.
Because a mortgage is a very complex transaction to take on.
Yeah.
And it is very difficult. I'm not saying that you can't use technology to make the process a little easier, but it's very, very difficult to do with somebody who only wants to email or text. Most people just want to text now. They don't want to pick up the phone and have a conversation.
Yeah.
I hope we get
I
back to
agree.
the days where we're having conversations.
Well, conversion certainly goes up. I don't care what kind of lead it is, when there is relationship, that is what creates trust and loyalty. And in fact, I'm running a free course in about 2 weeks for realtors, and it's earning the right to represent. Because in real estate, and probably in mortgage lending, because, people, when they're ready, they want to, see if they can get pre-approved. And so with real estate, if somebody wants to see a house and you'll jump up and show it to them, you can get a boatload of appointments. But then you can get ghosted, and you can get stood up for that appointment. And sometimes you even just get cut out of a deal because we didn't talk about new homes, and they went and, met with the builder and ended up buying a house. So my thing is, yes, you need to get the lead, but then you need to do an effective job of earning the right to represent that lead immediately. You have to establish your value immediately and build a relationship and build trust. And so where the average, time on a lead call might be 7 or 8 minutes, mine's 20. Because when we hang up that phone, I want you loyal to me. I want you excited to meet with me, and I want you to stick with me after we meet the first time. So to do that, I need to do something to garner that and to make you want to exclusively work with me. And I think that's the relationship part. It's just being able to ask those questions that really help the client get to where they need to get to as far as a decision is, the decision they want to make. And a lot of it always has to do with the numbers. We have to be able to talk numbers with clients to really build relationship, because everybody buys a payment before they buy a house, right?
That's interesting. I would have thought the opposite. I would have thought people fall in love with the home, with the features of the home, and nobody pays attention to the payment until the last second.
Well, you're right. And that's why it's our job to make sure it's the flip, because if they don't pay attention to the last second, that breeds a lot of frustration, right? Why would I want you to fall in love with something that is not in the budget you want to be in? And most people, I think the stats, the research that I last did, 88% of buyers would love to know something about the financing, the programs, and the numbers before they meet with you. Because, bottom line is, it's intimidating. It's a little bit intimidating when you go meet with a lender. You feel a little bit like you're being judged or dissected. We all feel that way. And I'm very comfortable with the numbers. But when I can sit and tell my client, at least give them a rough estimate, and we can talk a little bit about credit, and I can give them a sense of just like comfort, they're going to meet with you so much faster. And they're going to be a better client for you. And so that is what I coach my team to do. We are partners with our lenders. We don't just hand people off. We're partners with them. And that makes a client, a buyer, feel so much more taken care of. Like, we're going to lock arms. We're going to make this work, or we're going to let you know when it's going to work. So we take a little bit of that intimidation out of it.
I like that approach. I also like the concept that the realtor and the lender are partners, or the realtor and the builder, or the builder and the lender.
That's right.
Well, and you could throw the title company in there too. You know, too many times I see, and it's maybe more with the old school realtors. I almost hate to say this out loud, but I'm going to say it anyway. They call me. I've never worked with them before, but I've got their buyer pre-approved. I had one who, it was her uncle. She was using her uncle. And I'll tell you what, they just want to strong arm you, and I am a peon. I am nobody. I don't know what I'm doing. He knows everything. I know nothing. And they're just so rude and ruthless. And I'm going to use a specific example. At one point, he was prying into their credit and their bills, and it's like, I can't tell you that information. That's all confidential.
Wow.
Yeah, it's breaching confidentiality. But 20 years ago, we used to have those conversations, right?
Yeah.
It's a different day. We can't have those same conversations. And finally, the buyer, she called and she's like, I know it's my uncle. I know he's asking for all these things, but don't tell him anything. We don't want him to know. And I'm sitting here thinking, why did you hire this guy? If you don't trust him, if you don't appreciate the approach. I got to tell you, although that's an extreme example, I still see it where the realtors don't treat the loan officers with respect or vice versa. And I think that we are a team, that we ought to work together. And if we're going to get this over the finish line, there needs to be great communication.
Yeah. Excellent communication, excellent expectation setting. It's absolutely critical, and it's in the best interest of the client because they don't know what they don't know. And that's what I always tell realtors. I mean, you have to keep in mind 71% of licensed agents nationally sold 5 houses or less. Yeah. So
it shows.
Yeah, that makes it very difficult. And that's the part that I think could be so much better if we understand how to gain trust and loyalty and establish our value with our buyers, because it is a fast-paced world. And of course, they are calling on something they want to see right away. And so you first have to learn how to be savvy and slow them down. Because you already know if you waste their time showing them something, then they're going to be on to the next person. It does take some savvy and skill, but that's what I love coaching on. Yeah. I mean, it's those first, 10 minutes that you spend with someone that's really going to determine how this whole thing's going to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's back up for a second. You're doing sales coaching, and I'm going to ask just a very general question. I have to imagine if you were going to give advice, it would be multifaceted. But if you could narrow it down to just one or two things, what are the one or two pieces of advice you would give a sales organization?
The first piece of advice would be you have to know your numbers. And I say that because oftentimes when I work with sales organizations, they do not. They don't know from a lead call to an actual contact. What is our conversion there? From a contact to an actual appointment, how many people are we converting? And from an appointment to a sale, how many people are we converting? I break those down because those 3 areas require 3 different types of skills and focuses. And so a lot of times it's just if they know how many leads they're getting and they know how many sales they're getting, but we don't know the in-between. And then once you get a sale, are we retaining them? How many are you losing and having to resell? And so you got to know your numbers. That is one of the things that we every other Wednesday with my real estate team, with my brokerage, we call it WAC Week, which is weekly activity. And that is all about how many people did you talk to? How many leads did you get? Okay, if it was giving out your business card to 10 people. Out of that, how many contacts did you actually make? Is this a good lead source? Are these leads actually people that you can get a hold of, or are they not, ready? So that's important because you need to evaluate where your dollars are going, right? Your marketing dollars. And then of the people you make contact with, how many are you able to convert to an appointment? So is this really your potential buyer? Is this really your client, or do you need to look at that, in terms of, how you're driving leads? And then from that appointment, how many people are you able to close? When you get that broken down, man, you can be lethal. Just looking at that on a weekly basis or weekly for them every other week as a team is how you grow your business. That's how you scale. And I would tell any sales organization, you have to know that. You have to know where the money's going. You have to know where the gaps are in the skill sets that you then need to zero in on. There could be some really minor things you need to tweak that could literally explode your conversion. That's what blows me away, is how many opportunities there are. And then the second thing is your people strategies. What is your structure, strategy, and your fundamentals when it is concerning your buyer or your potential buyer, and what is that with your employees? You need to have both. Mm-hmm. And if you're really good doing that and you're looking at your numbers, I would say there's no way that you're not going to improve your revenue.
Seems like a common sense approach, but I'm with you. I don't think a lot of companies are tracking that, which is a shame because there's no reason not to. With the technology that we have.
I know.
We used to do it manually. When I first got in the mortgage business, we would kind of reverse engineer those numbers. We would be asked the question, how much do you want to make this year?
Yeah, so back into it.
Give them a number.
Absolutely.
And then that kind of translates into how many loans do you need to close?
Yep.
How many weekly visits do you need to make with realtors? Yep. How many calls do you need to make a day?
Yep.
And then you have to know your conversion ratios, of course, factor out all those numbers. But it gives you a set plan of a day-to-day, this is what I have to do. This is your goal. I make X amount of calls each day.
Yeah.
I visit Y amount of realtors each week, you know. But it was extremely helpful. And it kept us on task, and we were very productive, very successful.
You got to be looking at the numbers. And that's exactly what we do to set the goal. We back into it. But then you got to also watch it. Like, that's ideal, and that's what we hope happens, but then is it actually happening? Because it's great for determining your marketing for the next year, your budget. Oh, but I thought I was going to get all these leads from the internet, and I got how many referrals? That's less expensive, and a more solid, type of a deal. So then maybe you need to be focusing on more marketing to your pipeline and less, investing in internet leads. So, yeah. And I think, especially as real estate agents, we come from all walks of life. So many people, get into real estate, but learning to run your business like a business is invaluable.
Yeah.
It is invaluable.
I agree.
So,
I agree. Okay, so you know that my focus is on renovation lending.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I work with a lot of homeowners, but I work with a lot of home buyers too who are purchasing properties that maybe wouldn't pass a home inspection or appraisal and they need a special type of financing. And so I kind of want to tap into your real estate experience for listeners who fall into those camps. What advice would you give someone who's looking to tackle a renovation project?
My first thing I always ask my clients that are looking to do that is this going to solve the problem? Because I do get people who will think that they want to do a renovation and then they do that, and then 5 years later, they're still ready to sell because it didn't actually solve that problem. From a real estate perspective, obviously, I'm wanting to make sure that what you're trying to renovate is going to solve the problem. And then the second question is it going to appeal to the masses, or is this a house you're going to stay in forever? Because I've seen some interesting renovation things like taking the garage and making it living space, which might work well for your needs, but most people kind of want a garage. I mean, that's just been my experience. Yeah. And so is it, something that's going to appeal to the masses, or is that relevant? Because if you're going to be in this house forever, then it could be, or can it be undone? Other than that, I think it's just knowing what you're getting into. And I'm sure that's where probably you guys come in, because you have to evaluate the project, I'm sure, to determine the financing that they're going to get on it. But just as best you can, because sometimes you just don't know till you get into it, right? Because there's unknowns, but just evaluating what's the end result going to be, and good contractors.
Yeah.
to facilitate the project.
I think those are great questions. I haven't heard anybody ask them.
Really?
You're the first.
Oh, wow. Well, good.
I think it's great. I hope people are listening, taking note.
Well, then you don't have buyer's remorse. We don't want that. You want it to really solve the problem. Well, because I'll ask the question if you guys don't end up, purchasing new, because I'm all in the field a lot working with the team, kind of engaging, because I got to keep my finger on the pulse of the client too coming in the door. And I'll say, if you guys don't, end up purchasing new, what's your other option? Well, we're thinking about doing some renovation. Oh, great. So what would you renovate? Well, we're thinking about just, making the master bedroom bigger. I'm like, okay, so the kitchen, the dining room, everything else is what you want. Well, not really. Well, but we can't do anything with that. So it's like, okay, well, so how long will that be sufficient then? Because if you do this, are you still going to want to do something else in a few years? And honestly, sometimes people just haven't really thought about that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we could make it do, So I think that's an important question to ask. And sometimes a renovation is absolutely, if that's the property, you love that property and you can't find that anywhere else, especially in today's market at the price, then maybe the renovation is absolutely the thing that you need to do.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Those are great questions. So let's look at the flip side of this from the perspective of realtors that are representing either buyers that are looking to purchase a distressed property or sellers who have a distressed listing.
Sure.
What advice would you give to those agents?
Okay. So if I have a buyer who's looking at a distressed property, once again, do you know what you're getting into? You need to have a good team on the ground. A lot of times that'll be investors. And I get those calls all the time. And I'm like, do you have a team on the ground that can go look at this property and give you a good evaluation of what you're going to have to put into it? Because what I can tell you is what top of market is in this area. And what you don't want to do is over improve for the area, especially if it's an investor thing. But even if it's a buyer who's eventually going to want to sell the house, you don't want to over improve the area. You don't want to skip the utility type stuff. I see people get all excited about, the cabinets and the countertops. And it's like, don't miss the furnace, the water heater. Those are things that people just expect to work.
Yeah.
So that's not the fun stuff to invest in.
That's
but,
right.
You can't do all the pretty stuff and not invest in the fun stuff, because that's going to come back to get you on an inspection. And then you're going to have a house sitting. So with buyers, I'm always like, let's look at, try to get a really good estimate, knowing that you just can't know some things till you get in there and until you live in it. There's some things you just aren't going to know, but the best, job that we can possibly do of getting a good solid estimate on what it's going to take to bring this house to a, move-in ready home or to where you want it. And once you purchase it and then you spend that, are you going to still be, good in the market, or are you going to have to be, over market? So that's the biggest thing I'm going to tell a buyer. And then a seller who's selling a property like that, I'm just flat out honest. I'm like, listen, if you're going to sell a distressed property and we're going to identify it that way, just know that you're going to sell more than likely 20 to 25% under market. Because for every $100 thing you can do, someone's going to knock $1,000 off the price, even if it's simple, even if it's cosmetic, because they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so it doesn't make sense to not at least knock $1,000 off. That's going to get you maybe $7 off your mortgage payment at 7%, right?
Yeah.
And so I would tell a seller, just expect to sell under market if you don't want to do this stuff. I always say, purchasing a home is a very emotional decision backed up with logic, right? And so people can't fall in love with carpet allowance. They can fall in love with really nice carpet, though. And so, oh my gosh, I have so many things my little one-liners. But so I will talk with sellers, and I'm like, you can do whatever you want, but let's just keep in mind what this means in the market. The only thing I can tell you for sure is what top of market looks like. After that, it's a toss-up what people see value in, right? Someone may not care at all that the appliances are old. Someone, that might be the most important thing to them. And so once it's not top of market, then your home is always worth what someone's willing to pay for it, right? That's what it's worth, is what someone's willing to pay. Hopefully, that's consistent with what you want to sell it for. A lot of times it can be. That's the thing I will tell sellers is, as long as we're realistic, let's look at other homes that have, been distressed properties and have sold. This is what we need to compare ourselves to, not move-in ready homes that have been updated or, if yours has any issues, things that need to be done before someone can move in it. But yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned the top of market, because the type of financing that we work with, we're oftentimes helping buyers who are purchasing distressed properties. And it's up to the agent to determine the as-is value so they know what to offer. What do you think this house will be worth after it's been renovated?
Yeah.
And agents struggle with that. I love that you said that you're looking at the top of market value as well, because lenders, we need that subject to value more than we need the as-is. You need the as-is to write the offer, but we need to know, what is it going to be worth after it's been renovated?
To me, that's always compared to what? Everything is compared to what? So I'm going to look first in the local area. If it's the neighborhood, if I can stick to the neighborhood, I'm sticking to the neighborhood, because that's what the appraiser's going to do. And that's what the buyer's going to do. If I have to go out a little bit, then I'm going to go out a little bit, or I'm going to go back in time, maybe even sometimes before I go out further, because the market could be relatively consistent. But if granite countertops and wood floors and 42-inch uppers and 9-foot ceilings, and if that is what is existent in a home that is sold top of market, and then that gives me a really good idea. The best of the best, this is what people are paying for it in this area. So if we were going to do this, this is what we could get. Other than that, you never know. It depends on the market. If it's a crazy market and we don't have enough supply on the market, a lot of stuff that should not have been selling 10, 20 grand over list price was because people needed homes. But we're not there, at least right now, because rates are still hovering. So yeah. And people will ask me, well, if I put in new carpet, how much will I get? I was like, hey, if I could answer that, I'd be on Wall Street. I wish I could give you an exact number for that. But what I can tell you is if you don't put in new carpet, I can tell you better what it's costing you than I can tell you what it's going to gain you. Yeah. I can tell you if you don't do it, someone else is going to think they have to do it. And they're always going to attach a higher number value and emotionally to that than even what it's really going to cost. Yeah. That's why I say for every $100 thing you can do, someone's going to take $1,000 off the price. Yeah. So that's the way I try to,
That's handy information. I like it. And we talked about the importance of partnership between loan officers and realtors.
Sure.
I would say it's also important to kind of swim in your own lane. I would never tell a realtor how they should structure a contract.
Right.
It perturbs me when I work with buyers and they insist, I'm going to give you an example.
Sure.
I need an FHA loan. My agent said I need an FHA loan. I just had this happen this past week. It happens all the time. It's like, okay, I understand why they may have told you that. but I can get you into a conventional loan with 3% down instead of an FHA loan with 3.5% down, with better interest rate and lower mortgage insurance. And a lower cash to close, like your payments lower, your cash to close, and trying to convince a buyer that they are better off with a conventional loan after an agent has just convinced them that they need an FHA loan. That is they don't trust me. It happens all the time. It's like, I work with financing. I've been doing this over 20 years. I know. This is a better deal for you. But when it comes to distressed properties, a lot of times what I'll see is I'm working with a buyer. I've done a pre-approval for a renovation loan. The selling agent sends it over to the listing agent, and the listing agent thinks it's junk. They don't believe that there's financing out there available to get them to closing, even though the house may need repairs. So I'll pick up the phone and call the listing agent, and they think I'm blowing smoke, giving them a line. And it amazes me that agents don't know what they don't know. And then they are out there promoting these houses cash only, selling as is, seller unwilling to make repairs, and they won't accept anything but a cash offer or maybe sometimes a conventional offer. It's like, but I can give them Govy financing with a renovation component. They can close on this. You don't have to do anything. And that's been a really tough conversation for me to have.
I bet it is. I would say, hands down, that is the biggest gap in real estate, and it is my biggest passion, because we were taught, even when I was in new construction, if you're talking numbers and you understand financing, and not that you're a lender, you're not a lender, but you do enough to give the lender a lot of credibility so that your client will trust what the lender has to say, you will sell way more houses. And that, to this very day, is so true. And that is one of the reasons I developed my course for real estate agents and my course for new home builder sales teams. A big part of it is the financing part of it. And it's not about being specific. It's about giving great principles and a good understanding so buyers are not completely green. But yeah, I would say definitely calling that realtor, because clearly the 97% conventional would make more sense. But if they're not aware of that and they don't know what they don't know, there needs to be education. And I feel like it's a scary place a lot of times, I think, for realtors to go, especially if you're not a numbers person. I think a lot of it is just even the understanding of how do interest rates work? What is an interest rate? If you understand the why behind the what just a little bit, then you're not as intimidated by the questions you're going to get, and you don't feel like you're competitive with a lender. You feel like you guys can be a team because you know what you know and you know what you don't know. And so you're like, okay, this is where my line stops, and I want to make sure you get with the lender. And I would have said, you know what, they're going to have more programs, because programs change all the time. I cannot tell you all the programs. What I can tell you is, based on what you're telling me, we should be in a good range to find you a home. And I think that is the biggest gap for real estate agents. I know it's very intimidating, even for builder reps too, because when I coach on it, oh my gosh, it's so fun. And it's so fun when the light bulb goes on. And we just do financing 101. What is an FHA loan? What is a VA loan? What is a conventional loan? Just educate a little bit. And then it's really, what is your budget? That's really the whole purpose of that conversation. Your job is to get people pre-approved. And some lenders are kind of like, sometimes are not as delicate.
I think you might be.
They might not be.
You might be right.
Delicate, and that's okay. With saying, I always say it's never no. It's always when. When is the time going to, work for you to be able to purchase a home? So I just think there's a huge opportunity for more conversation and partnering there. And like the situation you're talking about, you could just be too conservative with your thoughts because you don't know what you don't know. And so you're just kind of in this narrow lane, and you don't give the lender the freedom to explore. So,
right. I love your line. So to tee it up as a realtor, if you're handing over a referral to a loan officer, I think these loans are going to be available to you, but they may have other programs.
Always.
That's the line.
Always.
I like that line.
Because there always are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just genuine. And there's all kinds of mortgage programs that come and go, and I don't know all the ins and outs of them, or different banks that really focus on community-type loans, or that focus on just land loans. Everybody has their niche, and I don't pretend to be the expert in all that. I just want to minimize the feeling of intimidation, being intimidated a little bit, not intimidation, but just feeling a little bit uncomfortable or anxious about the meeting.
Well, that's great advice. Now, we're going to wrap it up, and if there are buyers who would like you as their representation, in the real estate market, or if there are builders or other organizations who want to tap into that sales coaching, how can people reach you?
As far as representing buyers or sellers, I'm the Real Results Team Indy on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, YouTube. So I'm on all of them. And then Coach Tiffany D or X Factor Coaching on any of those sites. And then my email is just Tiffany at the XF for X Factor Coach.com. Tiffany at the XFcoach.com.
Well, thank you for letting me pick your brain and sharing all your
Absolutely.
insights.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been
fun.
Now the legalese required to appease attorneys, compliance officers, and regulators. This podcast is hosted by Jennifer Goldsby, NMLS number 591226, Vice President, Renovation Lending. The topics discussed herein reflect my personal opinion. They do not represent the opinions of Diamond Residential Mortgage Corporation and its management. Discussions about loan programs in this podcast are not a commitment to make a loan. Programs, approvals, rates, fees, and loan terms are subject to loan applications, credit risk, appraisal evaluation, underwriting guidelines, and other lending or qualification criteria and limitations, and are subject to change without notice. Not all products are available in all states. Not all borrowers will qualify. Diamond Residential Mortgage Corporation, 582 Oakwood Avenue, Lake Forest, Illinois, 60045 847-244 9301. NMLS number 186805. For licensing information, go to nmlsconsumeraccess.org/entity details.aspx/company/186805. Equal housing opportunity. Diamond Residential Mortgage Corporation is not affiliated with or acting on behalf of or at the direction of FHA, VA, USDA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or any governmental body or agency.